Hello, everybody, and welcome to another exciting episode of the Grief Let's Talk About It podcast. You guys know who it is. This is Tony Lynch. I'm the host of this podcast. And yes, we are your number one podcast for bringing you stories around death, dying, and grief and all the messiness that comes in between with some amazing people out here changing people's lives one heartbeat at a time. Now, if this is your first time tuning in, do me a favor. Head on over to that YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button, hit that bell notification so you'll be notified every time that we drop a new episode. But most importantly, if you know anyone who could benefit from the conversations that we have, please share this along with them. Now, before I bring on my next guest, I would like to say this is a live stream. So please get your questions and comments, put them in the comment section. We'll be sure to answer them as we go. And one other thing, this is for educational purposes only. Now, without further ado, guys, I'm bringing on my next guest. Guys, help me welcome Rob Leonetti to the show. Rob, how you doing, brother?
Hey, Tony, good to see you, man. Thanks for having me on today.
Of course, man. Thank you for the honor and the privilege of being able to share your story with our audience. Now, before we get started, introduce yourself. Tell people who you are, where you're from, and about the work that you do.
You bet, Tony. My pleasure. So, my name's Rob Leonetti, and I'm a certified trauma recovery practitioner and coach and resiliency expert. I'm the founder of HopeBridge Collective. I specialize in working with adults who have experienced developmental trauma, helping them navigate healing and growth so they can create a fulfilling, empowered, and authentic life. I'm very passionate about my mission to build these bridges of hope and offer really a holistic alternative to traditional therapy or coaching because I know firsthand how transformative this kind of healing can be. And to round it up, my personal approach to this really holds a compassionate, trauma informed space where my clients can feel seen and heard in a very much a peer level dynamic, which is very important. And my model also optimizes the healthy relationship between the mind and the body to optimize the nervous system's function for overall well being. And ultimately, the goal is to help clients regain their agency, their holistic wellness, and rediscover really their authentic voice and develop bulletproof resiliency to achieve personal and professional goals, to live really a life they can love. So I'm really looking forward to our conversation today, Tony.
Oh man, that is exciting, man! And thank you for the work that you do. Really, really important work. And so now
Likewise.
let's kick it off, man. How did you get into this work?
Oh, it was only about 3 decades in the making, Tony. Uh, yeah, I think we had spoken earlier. It's all about a personal mission, right? It's derived in pain at a purpose and mission driven. Um, Really, it's about my origin story and
Mhm.
my own challenges with developmental trauma as a very young child, losing my dad when I was only two and change, and he was 36 years old and had a massive heart attack with leaving four kids behind. And then years later, my mom remarried to what seemed like a decent fellow, but wind up being not so much. And he brought a lot of trauma. He brought a lot of mental and physical anguish to my upbringing, and that then obviously permeated into my development, my maturation, my brain functioning, my emotional well-being, etc. So not even being able to put words to this, as I grew and matured, feeling something was very wrong, and always never being able to answer the question, well, what do you want to do, Rob? What do you want to do? And I never had an answer, not because I struggled with what I wanted to try to put my finger on as a vocation. I simply didn't know myself because the trauma I had experienced had disassociated me with myself, my emotions, and the world around me. And that began to eat at me both mentally and physically. And later in life, I had a number of different health issues, physical health issues, including cardiovascular, like my father. And it brought me into the emergency room many more times than once. And I wound up having a heart attack, four stents, and a number of different autoimmune issues, and the list goes on and on. So all this trauma from an early age manifested itself later in life in a very dramatic way. And it took me years and years to come to the conclusions that I did, basically diagnosing myself where a number of clinicians couldn't put their finger on what was going on because of all the autoimmune situation. And we could talk about it more in depth, but there was a
Right.
very much a malfunctioning core cranial nerve called the vagus nerve that controls basically everything from your brain stem down to your gut. And when that goes haywire, you really have issues systemically. And that's
Right.
a very much a key part of your parasympathetic nervous system, which helps regulate your emotional states and your reaction to trauma. So it was a systemic meltdown over the course of many years manifesting itself. And I truly believe if I didn't find the answers myself, you and I wouldn't be speaking right now. That is a 100% fact. So with 30 plus years of firsthand experience and a reams and reams of research throughout my life, because I'm the kind of guy that wants to know how things work and I dive deep. That's actually part of what I did for a living with scientists and clinicians. So I got very deep into the science of what I was experiencing. And then after I was out of the woods, I was like, okay, this is great, fantastic. Thank God I'm still here. But I said, I'm not the only one. And if
Right.
it took me this long to find these answers out, I got to be a part of the solution here. I can't just sit back, hold all this information in, just live my life without giving back to those who could be experiencing the same thing. And that was when I put my mission hat on and said, this is what I'm going to do for my life and bring the solutions for holistic mental and physical wellness to those who have experienced the same issues, the same challenges, the same level of upbringing. You know, it's all about developmental trauma and what that does systemically as you age. And so that's my mission right now to help those afflicted come number one come forward
Mhm.
because it is a shame spiral like you've never seen before. Because how do you live with this and not be vocal about it? It's very difficult to take that first step when you're experiencing these very strange systematic meltdown, and maybe you don't have anybody to trust to say, wow, I'm really worried about myself. I don't know what the heck is going on. And
Right.
so to take the first step and to be vulnerable is the magic, is the key. It all starts with the first step. And I want people to understand that it's cool to be vulnerable, it's strong to be vulnerable, and take that first step and say, hey, listen, man, I need a little guidance here. I've been through what I've been through, and I need some help. It's all good. We're all human. We're all in this together. We're a community, and we got some challenges sometimes. And I'm here to tell you, I'm just part of a community of healers like you, Tony. I'm no different. I'm nothing special. I just got a lot of information and firsthand experience, and I just want to share it.
I think that's what puts us in a position to do what we do, that firsthand experience, right? Because you know just as well as I do, man. If you put someone in there that don't have a clue or have no lived experience, with the things that really matter or help make a difference, people tend to lose trust, right? Because they can't relate to them.
They can't
Now,
relate.
Yeah, I want to go back a little bit and let's talk about some of the immune um, um, challenges that you went through, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I mean, well, there's 80 documented autoimmune diseases in the world, and
Yeah.
the the problem here is that all the trauma and the dysregulated hormones and neurotransmitters create inflammation. And inflammation is the root cause of all dis-ease. Dis-ease, right?
Mhm.
It screws up your metabolic system. It creates it is the root cause of cardiovascular, obesity, diabetes. Um, I mean, I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia in my 30s, and I shushed it off because at that point it was almost a catch-all diagnosis, and but it was absolutely true, and it was debilitating. That and chronic fatigue and osteoarthritis, my joints began to kind of revolt on me. I've had numerous surgeries on my shoulders, my knees, just the inflammatory reaction, and that I'm sure absolutely was a defining cause of my cardiovascular issues as well.
Mhm.
So I was always growing up, I always was very, very susceptible to getting sick, just getting sick all the time. And that was a absolute offshoot of all of this. Um, I had bouts with weight control as a kid and as a teen, going back and forth. Um, Definitely the musculoskeletal gut issues, IBS, leaky gut. And then, of course, the hypersensitivity of the vagus nerve and the story that's behind that, which is a very interesting story because it's not just physical, it was the mental issues that stemmed from this trauma. So, a dysregulated nervous system, because of that trauma I experienced, complex post-traumatic stress was my was my calling card, and ultimately it was disassociation with my identity, and that's what it was all about. You disassociate. Trauma is about disassociation, and once that happens, you're lost. You're completely lost in the world. And what does that affect? Your choices. Why does it do that? Because you make choices based on a false identity, not your true, authentic identity. So if your choices determine your life, then if you're making choices based on not your authenticity, your values, then whose life are you living? So that became a very challenging time, and I don't wish that on anybody. And the problem is, Tony, I believe it's one of the most pervasive, invisible epidemics that's out there. Developmental trauma, because it's not like it's it's hidden in plain sight. We're all potentially victims of it, and there's 8 billion of us around. And it's not heavy duty in a way. It's not mental illness from a schizophrenia, bipolar, very serious, which means teams of clinicians. This is on the cusp of all of that, but you suffer in silence because it's very difficult to get assistance when it's at the cutting edge, it's at the cusp of kind of dramatically ruinating your life, but you're trying to keep it together and you're trying to look for answers, usually on your own, because you're in such a shame spiral to even admit it and go forward with somebody. And then, even, I mean, we've discussed it just like your last statement. you want to speak to somebody who's been in your shoes, because what you're experiencing is usually so confusing. It's so multi-aspect, because it involves your physical and your mental health. And where's one practitioner that does all that? They don't exist. So then you're a victim of the healthcare system and the healthcare paradigm, just bouncing from one to the next. They're not talking to each other. So you come out with no answers, frustrated and probably sicker. And so it's just, it's a frustrating place to be. So again, going back to trying to be a part of the solution for those struggling with this particular, potentially point in their life. But yeah, those are the inflammatory baseline of trauma, stress, the hormones, the cortisol, the adrenaline, all those rush of chemicals that are a byproduct of a trauma upbringing. And when your body is basically bathed in them, it's very difficult to call that insurmountable attack off, because it's just permeating all your cells and having its way with it. And then, of course, you're feeling terrible in every which way, shape, or form. And so you start thinking that you're terrible in every way, shape, or form. And that's not helpful whatsoever.
We got a few comments coming in on Instagram over here. I'm just going to say shy because I don't want to slaughter your name because I will. But they say this is just in my own meandering life perception. I spoke and reached out to professionals. They're not helping at all. Same thing that we were talking about, right? And I think we can dive deeper into that one. Also, they say I'm a stroke survivor, 15 years, never had anyone helped or supported me when it comes to getting medical professionals. I want to talk about that a little bit because it's the same thing that Rob was talking about. A lot of times when we're dealing with unresolved trauma or grief or abuse and things like that, it lives within the body. The problem is, or the challenge comes once it does that, we disconnect the head from the body. We live within our head, right? You know what I'm saying? So the trauma and
Yeah.
everything lives within our head, but the effects of everything lives within our body. So when you go out to seek help, they don't know. They're not. I don't want to disrespect our healthcare professionals. I just want to. I just want to say sometimes they are not trained in dealing with grief and trauma and things like that and how it affects the body. So in turn, and Rob, I could be wrong, but this is just a thought. This is just my opinion. But
Yeah.
most people will go into survival mode, meaning that you will suffer in silence, as Rob spoke about, and you begin to do things um, in order to keep you safe while neglecting the things that can keep you healthy, if that makes sense. So a lot of times it goes unnoticed. It goes unnoticed until, as you spoke, you have those underlying challenges like strokes, fibromyalgia. You get misdiagnosed to with ADD or what I'm saying, chronic depression, anxiety, all of these different things because they're not looking for the root cause of it. This is why I say it's important to connect with people like ourselves that work in these fields, right? And then from there, once you get the underlying problems resolved or begin to heal from them, you may see a dramatic change in um, how you begin to operate, right? Physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, right? You know what I'm saying? Because again, individuals like Rob and so many other amazing people out there, we look at the whole body, we look at the whole person, not just the bits and pieces of it. And it's because of the lived experience, right? We walk the talk. I mean, we walk the walk and we talk the talk. And yeah, exactly. Uh, Yep, they're forcing you to check into intensive facility for 4 weeks straight.
Mm.
And before you do something like that, reach out. Please reach out. Again, this is why we're having these conversations right here, so you know who's out there. Rob's information is in the YouTube channel, so please reach out. Right? It can be just as simple as having somebody that understands and help guide you through those elements and begin to pinpoint them. Okay. So no, don't be sorry. Please don't be sorry. This is not the platform to be started on. This is why we're
No,
having these
not at
conversations,
all.
please.
Not at all.
Right? You know what I'm saying? This is what we're here for. So don't ever apologize for asking questions um or
Mm-mm.
or wanting to ask for help. That's what we're here for. Again,
That's
okay?
it. Take that
Yeah,
step.
that's
Take
what we're
that
here
step.
for. Take that step. Come on now. You know what I'm saying? We're here for you. We're here for you. So don't struggle alone. Allow people to reach out to the right people. Okay. And again, we've all experienced these things, and you and I talked about it. The synapses, right? The disconnecting and the rewiring of our nervous system, which in
Hmm.
turn, because the body, your mind is designed to keep you safe. So it will play scenarios over to make you believe them. In turn, not letting you address the real issues so you can begin to heal, so you can become mentally, emotionally, and physically healthy. And again, Rob and I do share a similar past from being personal trainers as well, right? So I think a lot of that contributes to it. So Rob, I want to after hearing that over there, what are your thoughts?
Well, I want to. I think we could wrap our arms around the word trauma a little bit, and to your very very perfect thoughts on how it disassociates and what it does. Well, number one, typically clinical practitioners aren't really trained in trauma to the degree that they could be. They look
Mhm,
at their training, but however, trauma practitioners approach the conversations in a much different way. We don't want to re-traumatize during the conversation. And to your point, creating a safe space is exactly what it's all about. So let's talk about, if I may, trauma and exactly to your point, the systemic effects outside of my personal story. So it's a part of life. It always has been. That's not going to change. But
mhm,
the world has become traumatized even more by the events and the continuing horror that we see. Just turn on the news and you're done. You're traumatized already. Um, it's a leading factor in most behavioral and substance abuse disorders, and it could impact a person both psychologically, relationally, biologically, and emotionally. And it's usually a cocktail of all of that. It's never a one size fits all, certainly not from a diagnosis or treatment. And from a trauma informed perspective, we really got to look at every trauma survivor through a lens of a uniqueness because
mhm,
it is an incredibly multi-dimensional to their unique experience. And ultimately, it creates a world where we feel overwhelmed and powerless. Being locked in that traumatic state does not feel safe. By its nature, it is the great disconnector, as I've said, disconnects us from ourselves, our bodies, our emotions, and others. The truth is that it impacts the survivor's capacity to be in a relationship with both themselves and with others. And without a regulated nervous system, Tony, we can't live in what we call our window of tolerance, where we feel safe. We're not traumatized and we're not shut down. We're not hypervigilant. We're in our window of tolerance, our place where we feel safe in ourselves to
mhm,
connect with others and connect with ourselves. So, if we don't have those skills that were robbed from us from this trauma, we can't build the healthy relationships that we need, and we turn on ourselves vis-a-vis self-abandonment, declaring ourselves and our needs as unworthy
Hmm.
because
Hmm.
we really crave the love and belonging. We abandon our true self and try to become whatever we feel someone else wants us to be to earn the love we so desperately crave. So what do? We lose the connection to our authentic selves. And we never get the chance to develop a relationship with our own values, our own hopes and dreams and desires. We abandon all of those in pursuit of the connections with others. And inevitably, what happens? Those attempts at relationships never satisfy us because they're not
Hmm.
genuine. And for
Exactly.
a lot of those, for a lot of the trauma survivors, including myself early on, part of the recovery is shedding those identities taken from us as a result of our trauma. I used to call myself a chameleon because I'd morph into whatever it is I thought the other person wanted me to be just to feel socially accepted. Hey, listen, we're made like this. We're social creatures. We want to feel, we need to feel connected. That is part of our DNA. But trauma robs that of us. It completely robs it. And developmental trauma, which is my focus in the manifestation of in adults, um, is really dramatic. Um, they call you could be a child of trauma, and here's the very interesting thing, Tony. You could be a child of trauma before you're even born. Inter
Yes.
Intergenerational trauma and epigenetics have been proven that trauma is inherited, sometimes going back as far as 30 generations.
Mm.
30 generations, creating a child's baseline of regulation inside the womb. And if your mom was prone to dysregulations or spikes in trauma hormones like cortisol, well, guess what? That went through the umbilical cord and went into you too. So the bottom line is you are not to blame. That is something that needs to be wiped out and erased from your mentality. You are not to blame for the trauma, certainly for the trauma that you may have experienced and for the reactions that are trying to keep you safe. That's your body trying to keep your body and mind trying to keep you safe. And every year, the United States investigates 3.2 million reports of childhood abuse. And so, in clinician terms, adverse childhood experience, ACEs, could take many, many forms: verbal abuse, emotional, physical, the loss of a parent, right? The grieving around this. And guess what? Trauma in childhood increases the risk of PTSD, neurodevelopment disorders, substance abuse, personality disorders, psychotic mood disorders, dementia later in life, and it increases the risk of all metabolic disorders, Tony:
Yeah.
obesity, cardiac, type 2 diabetes. And here's the real kicker: the statistics have shown, this is terrible, that people who have experienced 6 or more ACEs, right, adverse childhood events, live an average of 20 years less.
Mm.
That is a very, very powerful statistic. And that is all because of the trauma experienced as a developing human being.
Yeah, we got we got some comments coming in. Shai, she actually they actually touched on what you just said. The transfers of trauma. She pinpointed, they pinpointed, said her mother experienced trauma before she was even born,
Yeah.
right? And and child abuse survivor, domestic abuse survivor. So yeah, Shai, it's the same thing that that Rob was touching on, right? This stuff has been passed down through you, and it could be a simple thing of just connecting with the right people and addressing those things, which could potentially reverse this and get you back where you need to be healthy. And I want to say something. Um, I don't want you to keep surviving. Right? We have to get out of survival mode. I'm 50 years
Absolutely.
old. You're 51. I'm sorry to put your age out there, but let's get you out of survival mode. Let's get you into healing mode. Let's get you with the right people. Okay, please. That's what we're here for. Christopher Wayne over on LinkedIn just shared this statement right here. I grew up with my mom, and she was the main pillar in my life, along with my grandmother. My mom picked the wrong people to marry, so ended up in abusive situations.
Hmm.
In December of 2019, mom was diagnosed with cancer, had two necrosis lymph nodes. I had to do everything for her for 2 years, listen to her screaming and agony for pain as much as towards the end, 20 hours a day, and having to hear her say, "Dear Lord Jesus, take me now. I just want to die." 100 times a day or more when she went into Pala.
Poor thing.
So thank you, Christopher. Thank you, everyone who's putting your comments and things in there. Keep it coming, okay? You know what I'm saying? This is what we're here for. I want to get your thoughts on that, Rob,
Mm.
and then we can dive. We can just talk about all of this right here. Thank you for that, Christopher. Thank you for everyone who's been tuning in, everyone who's putting your comments in there.
Yeah, thank
So
you so much.
yeah, it actually makes sense, right? It really does make sense. Everything can be passed down to you, and we not even know. And you having to experience that, Christopher, is that can be traumatic in itself as well, because now you've had to take on the role of caregiver, and you're listening to this. This can play a role in your own life, which, as Rob said, it can really distort your identity, right? Because you're no longer living within who you're supposed to be. You're living with an expectation of what you need to be for others. Yeah. So I'm gonna leave that right there, Chris. Rob, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I lost my mom, I lost my sister, I lost, I think, every aunt and uncle I have, along with my dad early on. So loss and grief, right? The subject of this show is incredibly intense. And as a caregiver, I mean, I was part of a system. I have two sisters who were close to my mom, and she absolutely was led an incredibly difficult life, and she tended to be more on the nervous Nelly spectrum, and that was probably passed to me. I have no doubt, um, but being the caregiver is a tremendous burden. It is the unsung hero, and with a big emphasis on hero, because without, I mean, what would your parent do without you? It's terrible to see them suffer. It is just unbelievably disheartening and agonizing to experience that. But just imagine what would happen without you, Christopher, to have supported her in the way you did. So you're a hero, man. There's no doubt about it. Um, but remember, trauma is the things that happen outside are traumatic. The things that happen inside are the trauma, right? It's not what happens on the outside. It's what happens in the inside, and how you interpret it, and how your nervous system consumes it, metabolizes it, and how it shows up in your everyday. And when you look at being, a kid, and as a result of those traumatic events that you experienced, and again, it's inside you, and like you were saying, Tony, your brain's got one function: to keep you alive. And part of that is to keep you safe. And when you experience these traumatic events, You disconnect from your emotions. That's part of how you're wired. And you have difficulty living in the present moment. You definitely do. And you then develop a negative view of yourself and the world, and you become very defensive, and you have a very big lack of trust, right? And we were talking, Tony, that that could manifest in violence and how you act out in your way of showing up in the world. But as you get older, these perspectives, all those perspectives I just mentioned, they keep showing up. They keep showing up in the present due to that developmental trauma and the hijacking of your ability to regulate your own nervous system. And then you put in a defensive trauma identity. And so, how do you transcend these states? That's the big question. How do you transcend this that manifest in the present but are shadows of the past? And since the trauma is the great disconnector, what do you need to do? You need to reconnect with yourself and restore that lost connection with your body and your emotions. And because trauma is a somatic body, relational injury, that's how it needs to be healed, interpersonally and
Mhm.
somatically. And once you find and reconnect to these things you've lost, then you have recovery. And what does it mean to recover something? It means to find it again. And what
Right.
do people find when they recover from trauma? They find themselves.
I love that. I want to give a shout out to Shy. As we're speaking, they're celebrating their father's first year death anniversary. So my heart is with you. Say their name, please. Put their name in there. Um, that way, because we keep their memory alive by saying the name, by remembering them
Oh, for sure.
through conversations and letting them know that that we're still here thinking about them. So it's a celebration. I know it may not feel that way, but our heart is with you. Our support is with you. So always, let us know what we can do for you. Also, Christopher wrote, definitely almost PTSD from that took me years to get over
Yeah.
it, but still can't hear one song because after her passing, I turned on her car, the song I just called to say I love you
Hmm.
to this day can't listen to. And honestly, Chris, that is that is a common thing. That is a common thing because sometimes we associate with the people that we love or the people that we have lost with songs. Songs can carry a lot of meanings. I mean, even to this day, I can't I have a hard time listening to 7 Years by I can't remember the guy's name, but I was 7 years old. Lucas Graham. That was one of my son's favorite songs. We used to sing it all the time. He used to love that song. Every time I hear that song, 9 years later, I still break down. I still break down. I still cry. But it's getting to a point now to where I do. Um, I can get majority of the way through the song. I can't get fully a way through the song. It still hurts and everything. But you're right. The PTSD that comes along with that. These are things that people do not talk about, right? Because people like to associate PTSD with veterans. They never think about the trauma survivors, the abuse survivors. The people who have experienced, you know, severe loss and things like that. Again, my friend Roosevelt put a statement up there. There's a book called "The Body Keeps the Score." Absolutely right, right. What I'm saying, it is crazy. What I'm saying, that all of these things that we're talking about right now, plays a huge part in how we develop in our trauma, in our grief, our nervous system, the things that we eat, what I'm saying, the songs that we hear. These things can trigger us in different levels. It takes time. It does. One thing that I always tell people: do something that you've done with your loved one who have passed away, right? If um, you've gone through abuse, any sort of abuse, you know, surround yourself with people that speak life and love over top of you and into you, right? People that can speak your love language, right? You know what I'm saying? I think that's huge. That's huge too. Language is important, right? You know what I'm saying? But not just verbal language. Your love language plays a huge part in how you develop. It really does, right? And especially when you're dealing with certain things. What are your thoughts, Rob?
Yeah, I think, well, the brain is an associative organ, and when
Hmm.
that's why, songs, music are extraordinarily powerful. They just
Hmm.
bring you back to days of old, good, bad, or indifferent, right? Your brain, there's part of your brain that is associative to the past, and yeah, it for good or bad, it will associate back to those very poignant types and areas and times of your life. And it's just part of the way we're wired. And yeah, there are songs that I can't listen to all the way through too because of loss and grief. But
Yeah.
I think it's important also with, I know that the subjects are heavy duty here, but it's super important to also keep the perspective that we're all in this together. We're all kind of miracles, really. I mean, I think the statistic is 1 in 400 trillion that you're even born. So
Yeah.
just in the fact that you've gotten here is a miracle. And the fact that, life doesn't come with an owner's manual, and it doesn't come with a built-in mentor to guide you through everything, but that's okay. That's why there are people, like Tony, to help when you're an adult and you're not in school anymore, and maybe doctors don't have the answers. And it's fantastic to have other outlets and access to resources that maybe look at life and the situations we're discussing through a different lens, and
Hmm.
a more
Hmm.
humanistic lens, and a more systemic and holistic lens, because it's not just about one aspect of the human condition. You can't talk about one without talking about it all. We're not just a brain, we're a body, we're organs, we're a personality, we're a lot. So
Right.
how there's, until there's a magic pill, which, who could speak about the future? But the thing about it is, we're in a very interesting time. Like, for example, like, for instance, like lobotomies to treat mental illness were once thought of as cutting edge. Lobotomies, really? Sticking a needle in your eye and disconnecting a part of your physical brain? Well,
Right.
with advancements in science, how we currently treat mental health challenges born in trauma will someday seem as crude as lobotomies. But that's the future. We can't do anything with that. We're subject to today. We're subject to what we have and the shoulders of, smart people that came before us. But today is very interesting, and I believe we're very fortunate to be in 2025, because we have a level of understanding, a baseline in the complex world of grief, of trauma, both mentally and physically, to draw upon and help ourselves live a more emotionally regulated, healthy life. Um, but it has to start with that holistic approach. It has to start with the whole person. It has to start with overall wellness. And the one thing that it does come along with is a need for commitment to get to a place where you want to be from the place that you're at. So until that magic pill is invented, it's going to take work. It's going to take commitment to get from here to there. It's just a fact. But the great thing is, because we live today and we have the knowledge that we do, and it's expanding, but again, that's tomorrow. What happens today, we have a lot. We have a lot to work with, and it's possible. And that's what I get excited about, to be able to bring what I believe is cutting edge thinking and science and holistic approaches to becoming well from the traumatic events that we may have experienced. So, I'm glad it's not 100 years ago. I'm sorry it's not 100 years from now, but I'm happy to be right here, because
Yeah.
things can get better. You have to keep a very positive outlook, even though it's hard. That's why I named my business HopeBridge, because there's nothing more powerful when you're hopeless than to have some hope and
Right.
to have a resource to cross the bridge to get to the other side. That's what I wished I'd had. So, I mean, all I do is try to be the resource that I never had. It's very
Right.
simple. It's very
Right.
simple. And
But
that's it.
I think the beautiful part about it is, and you said it in the beginning, becoming part of the solution, right? You know what I'm saying? Being the change that you want to see. And I think that's where the change, or where the mindset really begins to play a part in it, because we've seen the other side. We've seen the illnesses, or experienced the illnesses that have come along with it. And we've gotten here, which is a beautiful thing. I mean, it takes a lot of work. It takes individuals, as I say, when you have a gift and your gift manifests into something like what you do, Rob, you know, this thing makes sense. And you begin to manifest it out into the world. You begin to understand it. You want to know more about it so you can help other individuals, which leads me, as we got the questions coming in right now, I just want to say again, thank you guys so much. Shy, I get it. You learn to accept and forgive. And again, we have to get out of survival mode. Survival will keep you in a place where it
Stuck.
seems like it's keep you stuck. Okay, you know what I'm saying. So we can look. We're here to help get those develop those steps to get you through that and get you to living a healthier mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually life, and things like that. So again, thank you so much. And again, Christopher put a few statements up here, and I wanted to give a shout out to him. Shout out to your nonprofit, and supporting dementia, Alzheimer's for caregivers. That's much needed, and to relate to the identities of their loved ones is cherishthesewords.com. Cherishthesewords.com, guys. You know what I'm saying? Go check that out. But also, there's another one. Let's see, again, we was talking about PTSD, right? You know what I'm saying? Yes, and some think it's improper to say you have had PTSD in a different scenario. Absolutely, absolutely. We're right there with you. Let's see. And then the last statement, Mall of Hope for a similar reason. Okay, another name up there.
Yeah, cool.
And so um I want to get into something that you really really have a passion for. Let's talk about the vagus nerve, right? Because what I don't think a lot of people understand the impact the vagus nerves have, not just on surrounding nerves, but the signal that it shoots out through your body, and how it really can control the physical means, or physical dysfunctions that your body can experience.
Hmm, that's for sure. Well,
See, I know a little bit about it. I know a little bit.
yeah, yeah, I could tell. I think you could write a couple of books about it from the sense I get, Tony. But
I've
but yeah,
been doing some studying.
that's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, the vagus nerve. Vegas is Latin for wanderer. The vagus nerve is the 10th cranial nerve that emanates from your brain stem, and it wraps around. So It wraps around your esophagus, it wraps around your heart, your lungs, your gut, and your diaphragm. There's two different branches, that one that I just mentioned, and another one that wraps around your face and your ears. And it basically controls all those organs that I was just mentioning. So that's a big job. If that thing goes off kilt, you're not feeling so great. And that was my life for the better part of 2 years when that thing went hog wild. And I was in agony in so many different ways. It would take much more than this podcast to describe. So, and I don't wish that on certainly anyone. But there is something. So that is the physical aspect of the vagus nerve and how it controls. Certainly, there's a lot to do with the brain gut axis, how the brain communicates with the gut, your stomach, your intestines, all your digestive systems. And that is called the brain gut axis. And what is the superhighway of that axis? The vagus nerve. And the vagus nerve has different nerve endings. There are a couple of nerve endings, uh, nerve pathways, I'm sorry, called efferent and afferent. Efferent and afferent nerves either talk from the body to the brain or the brain to the body. Well, the vagus nerve speaks from the body to the brain. So it is the body is talking and telling the vagus nerve what to do. And there's actually a secondary brain in your gut called the enteric nervous system, ENS. And it is where 95% of the serotonin you have in your body, the neurotransmitter of feeling good, is generated in your gut. That's why gut health is so important. And that's why that superhighway is so important. And there's something called vagal tone, which is the healthy uh, super highway. We want to keep that highway clear of litter and clear of like kinks so it could communicate correctly. Now, all of this has another aspect when it comes to regulating a nervous system, this vagus nerve, and that is called polyvagal theory. And polyvagal theory, poly meaning several branches of the theory, right? Poly. Um, and to kind of put it simply, it's it's a model that was developed by a scientist called Stephen Porges, and it is a huge part, it is a core component of my practice. So it is a model that explains how the nervous system is involved in trauma and can help with trauma recovery. In its simplest terms, think of your body as an alarm clock, an alarm system that keeps you safe. It has three settings: the safe and connected mode, all good mode. That's called the ventral vagal mode. And ventral means front. That's the front of the vagus nerve. And that's the one that wraps around your face and your ears and just around the beginning of your throat. This is when you feel calm and happy and able to talk and play or relax. It's like when you're hanging out with people you trust and you're laughing and you're feeling peaceful and your body feels good and your heart beats steady and you feel safe. Polyvagal theory is the theory of safety. And then number two is the fight or flight mode. This is the alarm system analogy. That's the uh-oh mode. When something feels scary or stressful, like hearing, a loud bang or an unexpected feeling of being threatened, your body flips into this mode. Your heart beats faster. You feel jumpy or ready to run or yell. It's your body's way of preparing for the old fight or flight, right? We've all heard the fight or flight. And then the third aspect of the alarm system is the freeze and shutdown mode. It's the this is too much mode. And that's called the dorsal vagal. And the dorsal vagal is the one that wraps around all the organs down into the gut. And if things feel too scary or overwhelming, your body may just shut down. You feel really tired, you feel really numb, quiet, and you feel very disassociated. You don't have a sense of yourself. You're just like literally you're disassociated with yourself. So your body shifts between these modes automatically to protect yourself. But in the trauma brain, you're prone to live into one or two of these survival modes and not in the safe mode. The goal of trauma informed coaching is for people to live in that ventral vagal safe mode all or most of the time, where you can have emotional regulation. And trauma, again, disassociates and creates an absence of emotional regulation. So we want people to live in the ventral vagal. That's why that's why if ventral vagal is around the head and the face, that's why you could look at a person and instantly get a sense. Do you like this person? Should I trust this person? Is this person a threat? Hey, I think this person's great. That's the ventral vagal. That's your emotional regulation from your vagus nerve in polyvagal theory, telling you the person is safe or not safe. So, what do we do in trauma informed coaching? We want to create that ventral vagal space, and we want to have a very peer leveled relationship with our clients. We're not practitioners that are imposing and say, well, there's a power dynamic here. I'm the one talking to you. No, 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 no. We're just two people talking. And let's be safe. Let's get in a good zone. Let's just feel good about each other. And that's where the clients can open up. That's where the clients can be themselves. Maybe it's the first time the clients could even regulate and not dysregulate from themselves, being connected to their body for sometimes the first time. That's
Mhm,
why it's so
mhm,
important. And that darn vagus nerve is really imperative to not only body functions, but emotional regulations. It's part of the parasympathetic branch of the nervous system, and then the fight or flight is another branch that kind of goes out of your spine. But that's the one that is the fight or flight, where it floods you with hormones and adrenaline, and that's all well and good if we were back like 20,000 years when there was a saber-toothed tiger coming at us. Yeah, you want that. But now, if you have the same type of reaction that you're going to be eaten by an animal, then when you're talking with your boss and you have that same kind of reaction, well, that's not right. That's a completely non-regulated reaction. So you're
mhm,
really overstimulated, hypervigilant. So we want to calm all that stuff down. And that's not just so the nervous system, the vagus nerve, all of these things we're talking about, right? They're physical pieces of your body. So that's why concentrating on a holistic approach and wrapping your arms around the body's wellness gives you a much stronger potential for positive outcomes. When you make your wholeness well, you make everything well. You're, because story follows state. When your state is anxious, angry, etc., all the bad emotions, you will tell yourself the stories that align with those emotions. Even if they're BS, they're usually just lies anyway. But you're
mhm,
believing them because you're kind of thinking to yourself those stories, because you're in a river of bad hormones and bad reactions to whatever it is you're having, that dysregulation and that reactivity, that hypervigilance to. Of course, you're going to think in those terms. Your body is filled with those hormones that are fight or flight or shut down. Either you're going to go in a shame spiral and just think you're worthless, or you're going to get angry and want to, destroy. So
Right.
we're we're onions, man. We're many layers. We're complicated. There's no one size fits all. But you want to talk to people who get it, who have a handle on this kind of thing, and who care about you and who are compassionate and not just
Right.
looking to have a client, to have a paycheck or whatever. That's not what I'm about. I just want to help be the person that I never had.
I'm glad that you said that because you did touch on some points, and I want to clarify for Shy, um, because they were just talking about what you were saying about, what I'm saying, regulating, disconnecting. They were just saying that they couldn't feel temperatures or sensation, that vagus nerve, right? What I'm saying, going into fight or flights, and survival mode. And being someone who has had to go through the abuse that you've gone through, sometimes the body will respond to disassociate those sensations to
Yeah.
keep you safe, right?
Oh
It
yeah.
would numb you. It would keep you from feeling those painful sensations. It would keep you from feeling temperatures, and it would make you think that something's wrong because it has gone unchecked for so long, right? You know what I'm saying? So there's nothing wrong with you. We just have to get you, we have to get the nerves to re-regulate itself to where you begin to get those sensations by feeling you in well, maybe, what I'm saying. I would get Rob's opinion on this, but my thought is to put you in an environment to where it will actually jumpstart your senses over again, like a shock. It's like those paddle boards, the heart where they jump you back, right? But it has, I think, a lot of it has to do with frequency and vibration that you are feeling or blocking for the most part, right? And that could be a reason why your neurologist hasn't been able to figure it out because he's not looking in the right place. Again, this is why Rob is here. He's breaking it down. He look, please look. I can only speak a little bit about it. This is Rob's expertise on this, and so he will be the person that you want to connect with. And again, his information is there. Please reach out to him. That's what he's here for. Um, and Christopher put up a statement as well, and it says, so that is like how some people wake up and feel paralyzed, unable to speak or move. Yeah, because the body has gone into freeze mode for the most part at night. Because a lot of times when you don't go into REM sleep, your body will relive the traumas over and over and over and over again, in turn causing your body to just completely shut down. And so when you do get up in the mornings and things like that, or when you do awake, the first thing that is happening is that your body hasn't turned back on, right? So you are stuck. Now, I could be wrong. This is just my thoughts, maybe just my opinions about it and things like that. But I'm gonna pose this to Rob and let him kind of explain it a lot more than I could. What do you
No,
think, Rob?
you did a great you did a great job, Tone. I will say that sleep hygiene is unbelievably important. The lack of
Mhm.
sleep can absolutely ruin you. Absolutely positively. That's why we wrap our arms around all the aspects of health and wellness. The sleep hygiene, in other words, how well you sleep, how long you sleep, getting sunlight in your eyes first thing in the morning for 20 minutes to set your circadian rhythm so your body knows the cycles that it's in and to shut down at night properly. We look at nutrition, we look at relationships, we look at metabolic inflammation and supplementation, um, all the aspects of what I call the conscious body model, because I believe the bodies down to the cells are as conscious as our mind is. So we look at all of that circadian rhythm, breath work, neuroplasticity to rewire your brain, and that takes mindfulness and meditation and good nutrition, because you want to have the energy to rewire your synaptic patterns, because you just will springboard and boomerang right back into the same patterns you've had and not have any breakthroughs or change. And we want change. So change takes work, as I alluded to earlier. It takes commitment, it takes habits and discipline. But that's okay. You're not alone. That's the whole point. That's why it's a HopeBridge Collective, because we're a community of people supporting each other, and you're never alone. Being alone and loneliness is an isolation is one of the hallmarks of trauma and mental challenges. So that's the last thing we want. But yeah, I mean, breaking down the pathology of the vagus nerve and that dysregulated shutdown, as you were speaking about, Chris and Tony, that is a hallmark of a trauma response. It's a hallmark of it. So we want to untether that reaction, that pattern, from being where it is and nudge it to a better regulated area. And that takes connection. Basically, you need to reconnect with yourself. You've been dysregulated and disconnected in its simplest terms. That's the simplest way I could put it. Is a lot to it, and it's possible. That's the great thing. Again, to what we were speaking about before, being in today in 2025. You're number one, you're not alone. Number two, things will absolutely get better. Have faith in that. Have faith in that. Things will absolutely become more positive. You could become more regulated. You could leave these old patterns behind and break them. You have the strength. You absolutely have the strength. You just need a little guidance. That's it. That's it.
I love
That's
that,
it.
man. I love that. And so, before we begin to wrap this up, guys, do you guys have any more questions or thoughts? Put them in the comment section, and we'll address them. But you know what I'm saying, I want to say, Rob, thank you, man. Thank you for the work that you do. Really, really important. Thank you for your just your knowledge, your wisdom on this, man. You know what I'm saying, mind blowing, and just bringing such an awareness to the audience and everything. So I don't see any questions coming in or anything like that. So I have two more questions for you, Rob.
Yeah,
One would be, how can people find you, my brother?
oh, well, certainly my website, hopebridgecollective.com. And there are areas there where we could have what I call a synergy session, which is basically just a discovery call to see if I'm the right resource to help and to see if we're kind of energetically aligned. That's free. Give me a call. Give me check my calendar, put something on the calendar, and we'll have a chat. And then you could email me at rob@hopebridgecollective.com. And I'm also on Facebook and Instagram. And thank you for putting those links up, Tone. And that's where you could get me.
All right. So the second question would be, if you had a superpower, what would it be?
I think I've almost discovered it now, to be a healer, to to be the healer that I aspire to be, to help more people, is, well, that's my desire. My superpower is to be a super healer, and that's my aspiration. And I hope I'm well on my way to doing that. But that's what I really want to do. Yeah, and
I
I'm
love
doing it.
that.
So yeah.
I love that. So one last thing, if you could leave the audience with something, what would you leave them with?
Oh goodness, Tony, that's a fantastic question. Well, really, it's number one, the way you're feeling. If you're not pleased with what you're feeling, um, it's not your fault. I want you to understand, to my core, I know this. It's not your fault. Believe that. And so what does that mean? It's not your fault what you're feeling, and you can get well. 100%. You can get to the place you want to be. You can reach your goals professionally, personally. You just need to take a step. You need to practice what I call micro bravery, which is just a small step. That's all. Just take a step in the right direction and watch your life change for the better. So that's what I want to leave your audience with. Certainly, it's not their fault that developmental trauma or things like that has occurred, and it's very normal having a normal reaction to an abnormal situation. So don't think poorly about themselves. Things can change, and you're not alone.
Love that. I love that. Guys, as we wrap this episode up, I want to say thank you for everyone who's been tuning in and participating on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, all the platforms out there. Thank you guys for tuning in and everything. Thank you for being a part of this amazing conversation. Again, I want to thank my guest, Rob, for coming up here and just for the work that he does. Truly amazing, exciting conversation. And again, if you didn't hear what he said before, he put his information there. His information is in the YouTube channel, so go there, check him out. And guys, with all that being said, I love you guys. Thank you for allowing me to keep bringing these conversations to you guys. And we're going to see you guys in the next one. Peace. Love you.
Take care, everybody.